Hello and welcome to the Wednesday warm-up. The Wednesday warm-up is powered by The Inside Show. I am your host, Lee, and I'm so excited to be here this morning to discuss this all-important conversation. If you are from South Africa, my question to you is, are you traumatized? But before we continue the conversation, because we want to jump straight into it, we do not have much time left and we've got so much to speak about. I've got an amazing panel of guests. Well, I've got a replacement co-host here this morning because my co-host is not here. Him and his family are on a break. So I hope that he's watching because, that is loyalty. If you are not watching, Jesse, I'm very disappointed in you and I'm going to be very upset. But anyway, handing over to my co-host over here, Michaela Hansen, all the way from Namibia. How you doing?
I'm glad to be here. Okay, thank you so much for picking me as a replacement. Okay,
you know what?
I'm better than you.
Not really a replacement, Shame. That's such an ugly word.
It's fine. My self-esteem is down there. It works. It works.
No, Shame, girl, bring it up. Are you traumatized?
A little. A lot.
A lot. Yeah, no.
A lot.
And then we've got the one, the only. I love having this man on my show because he's got so much insight. You know what? There's times when I walk in the corridors of our office space and I just sit and I talk to him because, listen, our conversations can go on for hours. I'm like, you know what? Let us use your wisdom for the show to share insights.
Sure.
So none other than Neil Hartzenberg. Good morning, Neil. How are you?
Fine, thank you, Lee. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, co-host, there, Jesse's twin. Thank you so much for having me. I think we're going to have a good conversation this morning. And Lee, always, having discussions with you, insightful.
Yes.
We delve into things which other people would not dare speak about. And thanks so much for having me this morning. We're looking forward to it and seeing how we can add value.
Yes.
And also just bring solution or try and give solutions to our people out there watching. We're going to have a good show. Please subscribe, hit the like button, do whatever you need to do, send comments. We're waiting for you to respond. Yeah.
I love that. Can you see co-host? It's not a guest, it's a co-host. Soma, you heard it from my co-host Neil. Please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell if you haven't done so already. Right, guys, let's get straight into the topic. We are asking the question this morning for those of you who just joined us. South Africa. Are we traumatized? So we brought Neil in because he obviously has the expertise on dealing with trauma, dealing with situations that incite trauma. And so we will ask the question, what is trauma? We'll find out if we have experienced trauma, maybe not on such a large scale or perhaps not extremely serious, but we do have effects of trauma. And then we'll get into some of the things that contribute or possible contributing factors to our trauma. So first and foremost, let us discuss what is trauma. So Neil, what in your opinion would you describe trauma as being? Obviously it's probably a very broad, concept, if I can put it that way. But what would you say is trauma?
So the bare definition of trauma is a deep and a distressing, disturbing experience that anybody has. The minute your comfort zone or your personal space is being invaded or you being violated, it causes trauma. It causes distress. It causes disturbance in you. And so it literally throws you off the tracks and off the rails, as it were. So trauma is a deeply distressing and disturbing experience that one could have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mickey, your understanding of trauma, obviously Neil gave a formal definition of trauma, but maybe examples of trauma that you think would, or something that happens that could contribute to somebody experiencing trauma.
A lot of trauma in today's life, or like in today's age, especially in my generation, it comes from words. Like the saying,
sticks and stones.
Can't break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That is a lie. I think it's because we become more in tune with our emotions. So trauma to me, it's a act of disservice to a person to hurt them intentionally. You really do intentionally hurt people. So when you say something, the intent is to hurt. So yeah, that's my definition of trauma.
There's malice attached to it. And I guess also with the increase of social media, and everybody is on social media, you know, you can say something, you can just post anything out there and say what you want to say about people because you're obviously behind your screen, and that causes trauma in a lot of people.
Yeah, it causes that disturbance, pardon, of who you really are, because it brings you into, it almost throws you off balance because you know things are being said about you, things are being thrown out against you. You know, you're being violated because of your opinion, you're being isolated. And it causes trauma. It just causes this whole disruption in a person. It's a whole disruption of your emotions, your physical space for those people who are beaten or hurt. You know, it causes this disruption in you. And I think some of the examples would be rape, murder, the death of a child, the death of a loved one. And we've just recovered from COVID, or just about to have recovered through COVID and the lockdown period. And even that in itself was distressing, and it was disturbing because we were in an unfamiliar space. And so we're just recovering, and now the next thing hit us. So people haven't really recovered from that trauma of losing a loved one that time. And you're almost, in a sense, back to where we were in lockdown. We're going to talk about that later. You know, and so we are being forced into lockdown, whether it is through load shedding, because now you're isolated to your space at night. You know, and so it causes this disruption, and it causes distressing things. And we were just okay. Let me leave this for when we get there.
Okay. So traumatic events can happen to anybody right? Yes. Nobody is exempt from it. It doesn't matter what your social standing is. It doesn't matter what your financial standing is. It doesn't matter what your gender is, what your race is, what your religion is. Even religion, you know, people always think that if you are Christian, you are exempt from these kinds of things because where is God in all of this? But you will find that you also experience trauma. So like you rightfully said, trauma can be experienced: physical harm, sexual abuse, a loss of a loved one, war can also bring about that. The lockdown that you mentioned, the COVID pandemic, it was completely chaotic. It was like anarchy, basically. And many of us, because like you were saying, and the reason why the effects continue, because one thing after the other, and nobody really knows how to deal with it. Because we just, all that we hear, we switch on the radio, we go onto social media, we on our television, and all that we see is bad news. And I guess that's what they say, bad news sells. You know what I'm saying? So, and that's the reason why they constantly punt this in our faces. So it says here that, so this is stats from the US, obviously, because I could not find any reliable stats here on South Africa. But it says that 70% of US adults have experienced a traumatic event at least once. And obviously there's different variations of trauma, and there's also different levels, but there's also different effects that trauma has on you. So for instance, as an example, some people suffer from PTSD because something happened to them. For instance, wartime veterans or soldiers that have returned from a war zone, right? They would suffer from PTSD, which means that any sound would trigger something. They become violent, those kinds of things. And so now we're going to be speaking about some of the things in our country, South Africa, that could possibly, you know, have incited that traumatic experience that we have had. And first and foremost, I want to discuss Eskom. I know that it's a redundant topic. We've heard it. We hear it every single day. For those of you who have Eskom, a push. I just want to put it out there. It's an app. It's an app in South Africa that we have for our load shedding schedule. For those of you who are watching from across the borders, like Luca Levi, who we've got in the comment section there. It's an app that we have in South Africa to track our load shedding, right? And we see load shedding schedules changing all the time. We saw more now on stage 6. Then we on stage 5 and stage 4. But Kanti, we just like, but this feels like stage 7. All of those stages, 3, 4, 5, feels like stage 7.
At this point, it's stage 12.
12. Because, for instance, let's say, just to give you guys context, stage 6 load shedding in South Africa, which means that we will have periods like this. 4.5 hours, you will have no electricity. Then it will come on for about 3 hours. Then after that 3 hours, 3 or 4 hours, then you will have load shedding. So after that 3.5 hours, 4.5 hours that you didn't have electricity, you've got electricity for about 3 hours. Then you've got 2.5 hours after that. Then you've got electricity for about 4 hours. Then after that you've got load shedding again, no electricity for 2.5 hours. So in total, how much is that? That's about 10 hours of load shedding a day. Right? So which means 10 hours of no electricity. What does that do? The knock-on effects of that. So now your hospitals are affected because now we have to buy generators. Generators are expensive. We need to use diesel for generators. Diesel increases. Hello, that happened at midnight. So for those of you who do not know, the fuel prices increased as well. So then you've got that. Now businesses, the effects of that is that they've got financial strain on them. They just come out of lockdown, like you said, where everything was closed. They're beginning to recover. We've got this load shedding, right? Stage 6, stage 12, load shedding. And now generators. Now apparently, according to what you said, Neil, the solar panels are being stolen.
Yeah.
Andre de Ruyter comes out, who is the former CEO of Eskom. He comes out in an interview last week where he sat down with Annika Larsen on ENCA or ETV.
Update, his interview was retracted, so you can't find it.
Serious?
Yeah.
Wow.
I saw it on Twitter now.
That's interesting.
Wow.
That's very interesting. But
It
I
was
think it's
pulled
still,
back.
I think it's still available on the ENCA website because
I
I'm
mean,
on
if it's
the
on the
ENCA.
internet, it's on the internet.
It's
but
on the internet.
But it's formally retracted.
Okay. Now I see that. I see. Wait, let me just check. I'm just trying to. Okay. It's still on the on ENCA's website, but I guess on major platforms it has been retracted. But so that happened. He comes out and he spills the beans, you know.
Yeah.
He alleges that top-level government officials are embroiled in the scandal and the corruption that is rife at Eskom, stealing billions. 1 billion rand a month is looted, stolen from Eskom. These top-level officials that he alleged are involved, are now implicated. They retaliate. They he must come with evidence. Where's the evidence? He's fearing for his life. We know that in the interview he was poisoned before, and in there he name drops a few people. Like he mentions Pravin Gordhan. It was the meeting that he had with Pravin Gordhan and a few other officials. And at that meeting he was poisoned. There was cyanide in his coffee. And so the man is so now we know what happens to whistleblowers. It's a culture that we've become used to of assassinations.
Yeah.
The Fort Hare situation, deep-seated corruption in Fort Hare, which is a university in the Eastern Cape, right? And what happens there is that the people that whistleblow, they get taken out. They get shot at, you know, and it's just this thing has become normal. He also mentions that it's like a cartel. It's run like a mafia. Top level government, it's like a mafia. Eskom, it's run like a mafia. He says there's about 4 cartels, including that which in transit, which is our railway.
Yeah.
That's also non-existent because of corruption. And now we've got a situation where we're sitting here and we're like, okay, there's these things. And then he mentions that there's it's really run like a mafia because there's 60, 70 foot soldiers, assassins who are well-trained to just take people out.
And employed to do that. Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on that? I mean, we hear all these things. We've become conditioned to it. What are your thoughts on that?
So I think one of the things that stood out, or one of the things that's really that impacted what he said, was that it comes from somebody in a senior position.
Sure.
So who sat down with top-level government officials, and he comes and he blows the whistle. What are the chances? Everybody, and I think because there's so much uncertainty, because they're spinning the stories here and there, there's uncertainty, so you start to question, and it leaves a country in doubt.
Yes.
Who do we believe now? And then I think from the starting point and from the offset, I think when there's uncertainty, people make assumptions, and sometimes assumptions, I believe, are the breeding ground for wars. Because we assume things, and because we are not clear, we're not sure. We have a president on the other hand that is mum about the thing. They don't say anything. There's no progression in terms of how are we going to get through this. There's no, it's just stories, pie in the sky things. And so when somebody like Annika Ruyter comes out and makes the scathing allegations against people, I'm telling you, he's going to ruffle a few feathers around that.
Definitely.
But my concern is what happens to the people on the ground. Because we're sitting there and you're thinking, wow, this is what's happening. Our own government cannot protect us. If they can't protect if they can't protect the citizens of the country and provide the basic needs for our country, where does it leave us? In a state of trauma, where you're uncertain, you don't know what's going to happen next. Are we going to have electricity? For one of the things that I know that in the past when there was load shedding, we could have cell access. The towers were working. Now, if there's power cuts and there's load shedding, everything is
there's
down.
No network.
There's no network. And so for me, that is at any given moment, South Africa can be thrown into a total blackout, into everything. And that is what people are scared about.
Yes.
And so when we're talking about trauma in terms of that, you see that we're in a distressing position and we're uncertain about what's happening. And so people on the ground are really, I think traumatized by the fact that we're uncertain. We don't know what's going to happen next. With Eskom, if there's no electricity, there can't be work. People have to, as you alluded to just now, there's generators that must be put on, there's solar panels that needs to be bought, there's inverters that, and it's growing. And so it causes this great uncertainty amongst our people and the impatience that goes with it.
Yes.
For example, I was sharing with you the other day, I was driving, and so we're coming up on Columbine Road, the robot is open, I see that it's green. But at the back of my mind, I'm treating it as though there's no electricity, and I'm coming to us, and Cheryl says to me, dude, what are you doing? The robot is open. And then I realized, you know what, the robot is green. Let me go on. So we are almost conditioned to what is being enforced upon us, and I think maladministration or all of those things makes us wonder what's going to happen to us next. And that uncertainty is the thing that's getting to our people now.
The name befalls me, but there was a professor that I was listening to that was on ENCA, and he had a discussion with one of the hosts of one of the segments, and he mentioned something so significant, but something that's so obvious to us. He says South Africa doesn't have an energy crisis, it has a leadership crisis.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Because South Africa is so rich with resources, like natural resources. For instance, one of the biggest rivers or water bodies is situated in Africa, right? We have ideal weather conditions for wind and turbine and all those kinds of things. But even Annika Ruyter mentions that in his interview. He says that we have the capacity, we have the ability to change from coal to this, but obviously, if this is not a mafia, then why are they gatekeeping? Why are they gatekeeping the fact that we must still have coal? And then they give you third grade coal, stones, basically. They're selling stones. Now the power stations are breaking down, the generators at the power stations are breaking down. He mentioned something so significant, and I know that it's a topic that we don't like to get into because again it deals with the issue of race. But it's inevitable that we have to deal with this, right? Because now we've got a situation from 1961 to 1991, that's 30 years. 12 power stations were built. And that was under the apartheid government, regime. That is 12 power stations that were built. From 1999 to 2001, another 30 years later, 3. And all 3 of those don't work. So now we ask ourselves the question, because I hear a lot of people saying, yeah, but it's historical trauma. You can't blame. How can you fix in 20 years or catch up in 20 years what has been inflicted on us for hundreds of years? And my answer is, how are we regressing?
Exactly.
Because that argument doesn't stand anymore. How do you regress and you don't progress? Because at least there must be some sort of, even if you didn't catch up to your, for instance, your white counterparts, you didn't catch up, but there should be some form of progression. It might not now be on a billionaire status.
I agree.
See what I'm saying?
But it's not, I don't think it can be used as an argument. However, it's more a mentality. It's like, listen, I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to deal with having to fix the issue. I just want to reap the seed that I am, quote unquote, sowing, which in essence what they're doing is they're stealing it and they're harvesting it for themselves. So what I find ironic is that bad things happen in the dark.
Yes.
Wow.
In load shedding.
So this entire
Pew, 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 pew.
this entire thing about Eskom and what Andre de Ruyter said, it's not far-fetched. It might sound, what are you talking
Insane.
about? What are you saying?
Yeah.
But it's not far-fetched. I think it's a thing of, would I say it's a mafia thing? Probably. What I would say it's what we've been saying, it's mismanagement of funds and so forth. However, there's a self-interest involved trying to save themselves, what you've been saying, Lee, the whole time. It's literally just self-interest. And what Aganil said is like, they don't know how to protect the country. The problem is, they're so scared of not being able to protect themselves that they're trying to sort out that first.
Yes.
Instead of us.
Yes.
That's also another problem.
But that is an effect of trauma.
Yes.
Past trauma, is that
Yes.
not?
It is. But one of the things that I just want to latch on to that you were saying in terms of the 12 power stations that were built over a period of 31 years. One, I think it was a preacher who preached at our church once, and he said, you know what? I can take a 1938 Mercedes-Benz. I can give it to one individual, or I have two of them. I can give it to one individual, and I can give the other one to a second individual. And it comes down to that mindset of looking after what has been handed to us.
Yes.
And so he says that the one will take that car, and in a day that car will be ruined. It will be finished because of a lack of maintenance. And the other one can still over time look after this thing and be progressive to a point where that car becomes an asset of almost leverage to get on to the next one.
Yes.
And so I think what has happened in South Africa, we were given a thing that was functioning. Prasa, railway, Transnet was in a functioning state. All that needed to happen.
The post office.
Yes, the post office.
Hey,
yeah. The post office. All that needed to happen was the maintenance of those things over a period of time, and use that as leverage to prove that what you've given, we've improved on what you have given us. And I think that is the sad reality about it is there's no improvement, or the little improvement that has been made is so overshadowed by what we're facing now that we can't see that. And so all that needed to happen was take something and maintain it over a period of time and use it as leverage
Yes.
for where we are.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
So I have a question. What if it's made me think of, this was built by a white man and I hate it? It's literally that hate mentality where it's like, they just can't see the good in it. Because if you were to talk about people that lived during the apartheid days, and most people often say when it was apartheid it was better. And for many of us, when you look at the history and so on, it wasn't a good thing emotionally. And what Verwoerd said in his book, you guys must actually go read his book, but first get educated about apartheid first, because you might even agree with him at some point. He said in
And
the
what
book,
kind of propaganda is spewed. So
Yes,
you must
so
also be
very,
careful
very
what
careful.
kind of books you get on apartheid.
he's extremely smart. But he said it's going to live on for the next 500 years, which is actually happening, because if you look at... Joe on Monday's podcast said that apartheid still exists. I think he meant racism.
Yes.
Because even though we're racist, we still kind of work together. There isn't a segregated
not
place so-and-so.
segregated, yeah.
So it's like a thing of each race has their own self-hatred. Now, there's also this over-boasting confidence of one race superior to another. And that's why we cannot work together, because we were separated for so long. That's why we are unwilling to understand. I think that we are unwilling to understand one's value. We just want to do what we want to do.
Yes.
Because I'm comfortable where I'm sitting. I don't really care about you, because you're not actually helping me.
Yeah.
You just stay there.
You mentioned something very important, and I think this is also one of the effects of, or one of the signs of trauma. It's self-loathing,
Yes.
right? Because something negative happened to you. For instance, in this instance, apartheid. It happened to our forefathers. We're still feeling the effects of it. You cannot now ignorantly say, apartheid is over. What are you still complaining about? Because like you were saying, Hendrik Verwoerd was 100% correct. They structured, the system of apartheid was set up in such a way that it has generational effects.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it can be broken.
Yes.
The generational cycle curse can be broken, but the victims continue to claim victimhood.
Yes.
Because
They
it's
make
comfortable.
that
Yeah.
victimhood is the idol that we have worshipped now.
Yeah.
And that's why we stay in this continuous cycle of trauma. That's the reason why you cannot deal with issues like this, because then it's a matter of, so what?
Yeah.
It's an attitude of, so what?
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
It's like,
It's
for
like-
instance, somebody that is abused in an abusive
They
relationship.
romanticize everything.
They romanticize it.
The problem
It's
is
good when it's good and it's
romanticizing
bad when it's bad.
Yeah.
But because this is the in trend now, it's not. You know what? I'm actually so cool. Like, Leandra, you happy? That is so gross.
Yes.
Why are you happy?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm upset. You must be upset with me.
Yes.
Yes.
So it's like, literally, it's where it literally comes down to not wanting to fix the core issue, and that I think that's always the main thing that we stand on. But however, when you're in power, your morals get corrupted. Any businessman, your morals
That's
are
true.
corrupted, because at the end of the day, business is business. I don't care what anyone says.
Yeah.
Even me. I can lie to you and I can charge you $600 to do your hair,
Yeah.
while it's actually supposed to be 200. But because I need to, get a
Yes.
little bit of extra money,
Yeah.
I want to keep to it. There's always a sense of corruption, with whatever you do. So to people high in power, your morals are so corrupted because everybody else agrees with what you're doing.
Yeah. And I think it's true. It's true what you're saying. That we can't deny the fact that apartheid hurt. It hurt us as a people, as black
Yeah.
people. It hurts. The impact has lasting effects on us, and,
Yes.
and that in itself is traumatic. And also, we find a place that we now exposed to liberation and to freedom. And sometimes that freedom is overstated in what's happening. That people think that they're exempt from law.
Yes.
They feel that they're free. They have been set
Yes.
free from law and things which keeps us in check. You know. And so it's really hard, and we cannot deny the fact that we've been hurting. And that in itself, if you hear what your parents went through, how they had to hustle and struggle, it has an impact on you.
Definitely.
Because they were in a distressing situation, trying to do the best for us as their children, but it's impacting, and we cannot write it off and say that. But we need to get past that place where we are now. So we've been given a country.
Yes.
Let's do better.
Yes.
Come we show that what we can do is something better. Even if you don't want that the white man has built. Build your own thing, but build it in a way that will prove that, guys, you know what, we can do without you. And I think it is the fundamental issue about that whole mindset that's binding and holding us down, is that we need to get past and stop being the victim.
Yes.
And start claiming the victory, because we are capable. I think we've got capable black people, we've got capable people that are able to do above what the white people could have done. And I think that somebody once said that if an art teacher teaches an artist to draw, if that artist that is teaching is not better than him, then he has failed.
Yes.
And I think that is what we need to prove as a society, as a generation. And part of what we were discussing is that, in yourself, you need to better yourself and
Yes.
show that although I've come from a strict apartheid thing and I was discriminated against, here I am based on my own efforts and on my own achievements that I've done by myself. And I think that it speaks volume of overcoming that. And even in trauma, the minute you are almost free of the trauma is when you start dealing with it.
Yes.
You start dealing with it.
Yes.
Acceptance coming, this is what happened. But it's not what happened that matters. It's what's going to happen in the future to
Yes.
you. How will you prepare and make sure that you secured from that, and build up boundaries and walls within that trauma, and also make things better for yourself where you are. If that good, yeah.
I want Mickey to just get in the comments there before I get into the next segue into something else that I want to speak about. So let's get into the comments and then we'll continue. But thank you so much for watching, everybody who's online right now. Thank you so much for watching. Over to you, Mickey.
So Luca Levi says, happy Wednesday, everyone. Today's topic seems very interesting. King Tio had talked about, and then he has a little wave emoji there.
Hey.
And then Keegan Agonia as exclamation parts, meaning that he agrees.
Okay.
And then Ranon says, good morning, everyone. And
Good
then
morning.
Good morning. And then Luca says, we in a lot of African countries crave good leadership. We are so rich in resources, yet for some reason still cannot manage them. The levels of self-interest among our leaders knows no bounds.
Sure.
Agreed.
So profound.
Sheldon Banks says, well said, Pastor Neil. Nicole agrees with him. Nicole Van Heeren agrees with him. No, Van Heeren.
Ja, van Heerden.
Sorry, I almost said something else. Then Lucas says, victim mentality is the best way to go nowhere fast. It is important to acknowledge our difficult and dark history, but now we need to work together and succeed. in spite of our history. Now the question is, are we lazy and disobedient, or are we ignorant and arrogant?
Good question, because it helps us to segue into this. On Monday's show, when I was listening to Xavier's podcast, and he was somebody mentioned there was a debate happening, right? So one person said, other countries, if you look at other countries that have experienced traumatic events, they have rebuilt. And then somebody else said, but they are better off now. And then there was mentions of America was one of the countries that were mentioned. And then the other person said, no, but how is America's not any better? America's not doing any better. They're also struggling. But here's my thing on that. And Luca said it like thank you for being another co-host here, Luca, because it's that thing of victimhood, right? Yeah. And let's look at the example of the United States. Look at the example of Japan. Let's look. Japan was before 9/11. Hiroshima and Nagasaki, right? Complete annihilation of those two cities, right? Complete, absolute devastation. What happened? The nation came together. They understood. This is trauma. We've lost people.
Yes.
We have lost our homes. Everything is completely and utterly destroyed. Within a number of years, what was it, about 2 years or so? I'm not too sure of the exact amount of years, but it wasn't an extremely long time. It wasn't 10 years or whatever. They managed to rebuild because they understood. Staying a victim, crying, sobbing, it's not going to help us. We're going to sit on our ash heaps and we're going to cry, and that's all that's going to come of it. Before you go there. United States, 9/11 happened. The nation clubbed together. They understood this is an attack on American soil. We are the American people. A lot of people say Americans are arrogant, but there's a strong sense of self that is instilled in those from American children at the very tender age, toddlers. They understand to instill that you have the power. What do? We talk about our past so much. We romanticize the past. We romanticize our hurt, that we stay in that place of victimhood.
And we transfer that to our kids. Now you've got a cycle of traumatic South Africans. Yeah.
And that's why we are here.
Yes.
Remember when you were talking about China?
Yes.
So in the podcast,
Japan.
I think it was China. You mentioned China on Monday.
Okay, China.
Yeah, Justin mentioned China on Monday. And then Joe went, but you have to remember that China is communist. So he was using, the question is, what country rebuilt themselves within 20 years? And then Justin went China, and then he said communist. And then Annika said that's not the point. The question is, who rebuilt themselves?
Exactly.
Yes.
So maybe if I look at the question like that, if we're communist, maybe things would be better. Or if we're capitalist, maybe things would be better. Yeah. That's not the
Democracy
point.
Does not work.
It does.
Okay, let me just put it out there on the onset. Democracy does not work.
Neither does becoming a tyrant. But we move. Yeah. We move. But the question is, what is being taught in the house?
Yes.
In the environment that they're raised in, and in schools. So it's like there's a sense of togetherness.
Yes.
There's a sense of we understand.
Yes. We are in it together.
But
it's not like me against you.
I understand what you're going through. But is it affecting me? No.
Yes.
As long as it doesn't affect me, I'm good with it.
Yeah.
I think it's a mentality, We don't have to even go further. Come and go to the tsunami that hit Japan. Dude, within a few months, the power stations were back on. And it were nuclear reactors that were busted. I think what we need in South Africa is really a coming together for the greater good of society and our nation, not about the self-empowering ego trips that people are on and self-enrichment. It's not about that. Let's get the country together and make this thing work. I mean, to rebuild after a tsunami that killed millions of people. I think to do
I mean,
that,
come
and
on.
also to put measures in place so that it doesn't happen again.
Yes.
I think it's part of, and
Yes.
so part of trauma, the victory in trauma is to build up those things so that this will never ever happen to me again.
Yes.
To actually secure and safeguard me against this.
Yes.
And I think our country needs a unification of some sort.
Mm.
We need to come together where the betterment of our people is the priority for
Yes.
what government and for what our leaders are about to do. Because the number one thing, I was looking at something and I asked the question, why must there be governments in place? And that came through to me, no definition from nowhere, just deep down inside of myself. Was the purpose of a government is to protect its citizens and to care and to provide for their citizens.
Yes.
And to make life, to have a good a way of life that you have. You know what, the quality of our lives have been almost brought to nothing. I mean, to sit for 2 hours with electricity, is that quality of life?
Not
It's
at
not.
all.
For you to be worried about work, is my job going to be secure because now we're not making so much baked beans anymore because of power cuts? They'll have to. I mean, now the other day, how many millions of chickens had to be culled?
Yo.
Obviously, with that goes labor.
Yes.
And now we're sitting there and our quality of life is diminishing day by day unless we unite as a people, starting in our homes, where we better and try and motivate for a better mindset and try and get out of this negativity that we are.
Yes.
You know, and I think it's going to help us if we do that. And so coming back to all of this Eskom debacle and all of these things, I think we need a unified country.
Yes.
Yeah, amongst the people, and where no political party wants to gain brownie points because of what they've done, but we need to get our people,
Yes.
we need to motivate and get our people to that
You
place.
see, Anthony, I think the problem is that we often speak, we complain, we speak, we complain, we
Yeah,
complain, we speak,
yeah.
and we just be like, there needs to be someone. And oftentimes you hear this in movies, you know, you should stop saying there should be someone. You be that person.
Yeah.
It's very
You be the
difficult.
change you want to see.
You know that, or it's very, 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 very difficult. However, I do think in some degree, it's like stop complaining if you're not really helping. the
Yes.
issue.
Yes, yes.
That's what we do. We on the outskirts. But then it goes back to there is that cycle of trauma. It's so debilitating because it doesn't allow progress. It's very counterproductive. Trauma is extremely counterproductive because all you do is you sit and complain. Now this is the cycle of trauma. One of the effects of trauma also that we see. We are so traumatized from the past, people of color, black people, brown people, so traumatized that we vote the same perpetrator, predator into power every single time there's a
Because
vote.
we are comfortable and it's all that we know.
But it's because we've been fed. Because what is the definition of fear? It's a debilitating fear, right?
Yeah.
So because we've experienced the trauma, now the effects of that trauma is a cycle of repetition of voting the same perpetrator back into power. Because why? We're not dealing with it. So one of the things here that it says types of trauma responses, they say there's resistance. I'm not going to go into that. Natural resistance, PTSD, which I explained, post-traumatic stress disorder. So what happens? You had a negative experience. Maybe say, for instance, you were caught up in a they held you up. They held you up or whatever. Now you're scared to leave your house. That's the extreme effect of PTSD. Then there's acute stress disorder. Then there's adjustment disorder. And that is where we are. I feel like, and you guys can tell me in the comment section where you find yourself in, but I think most of South Africans are in adjustment disorders. We adjust our lives in order to mitigate the rot that is evident in our country. So what do? Generators, solar panels, what's that? Inverters.
UPS.
We're doing all these things. We are constantly trying to adapt. We are adapting. We are adjusting our living conditions. We put up burglar bars. Our walls are high. We sell our homes in freestanding places. We move to complexes and estates. We do all these things. What we're doing is we're just spending more on trying to mitigate.
And to adjust ourselves to the things that we're affected by.
But we don't take, like for instance, the voting thing. And I'm big on voting. I'm extremely big on voting. I feel like it's of utmost importance. And the last time when we had the local elections, we also had a show on local elections. Tessa Dooms, which is one of our other co-hosts that comes on bi-monthly. She hasn't been on in a while, but she will be on back again. She drives this thing of being able to vote, know who your parties are, know what their responsibilities are. We don't know these things.
Yeah.
And I think on that voting thing, the thing that gets to me at times is vote for change. But there hasn't been change in the last 3 years.
And what do? They just come local election time. Jay mentioned it on Monday's show. He's like, okay, October, you're going to see this. Everything's going to work.
Yeah.
Because next year's elections.
Yeah.
It's our national elections. So what's going to happen is things are someone going to start working end of the year.
Yeah. And then I think it's about that political cookie, brown cookie buying. And I think it is really... it's really difficult to get past. And so coming back to the case of trauma, and I don't think there could have been a better time for you to put this subject to the front. And we get into part of that is that one of the things that we mustn't get into a place, and it can also be one segment of it is to be in denial.
Yes.
And I think it's hard, really, like the cycle of grief. There's different cycles until you get to the place of acceptance, and where you live with
distress.
And you're distressed, and you're depressed about things, and it's really depressing when you don't know where things are going. But I think what we need to get, our mental health, is our own responsibility.
Yes.
You know what? We cannot look on the circumstance. It's hard, and it's like basically saying that it's easy for you to say. It's not easy. But I think to get past that place is to stop romanticizing that.
Yes.
And what you were referring to was a Stockholm syndrome, where you fall in love with the person who keeps you captive.
Yes.
And I think we need to break that. It's hard. It's a difficult thing to do. But I think we need to educate and empower our people that way in our conversations around is to break that mindset. And so, and one of the things that we alluded to earlier on was the fact that it's transferred to our children.
Yes.
The more negative things you speak about that, our children did not experience apartheid. They experience apartheid through our mouths.
Sure.
Yes.
What we
and
tell
our
them,
actions.
And our actions. Yeah, it's very hard.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, another topic of discussion, and I think that this is also what just further, entrenches us into this thing that we are in, is the fact that we are now greylisted in South Africa. Yeah. So what that means is that South Africa has failed to ensure its systems could bring to book those who are involved in illicit transactions. So for instance, money laundering, terrorist funding, those kinds of things. And it's rife. And once again, it goes to state capture, it goes to corruption, it goes to all these things that we have been speaking about. That's also characteristics of the Eskom failure, right? And what happens is that we knew it was looming over our heads all the time, Greylist. And then our president comes out and he says, it's not really something to worry about. Yeah, we are greylisted, but it's not really something to worry about. I think it's Zimbabwe or Nigeria that's also been greylisted along with us. Yeah, and so he says that, it's not something to be exceptionally worried about because it won't really affect us that much. But according to the research, so we have been greylisted by Global Watchdog Financial Action Task Force, which is FATF. And this scars our international reputation. Yes. We do know, how it is for an economy to be quiet, to at least function. We need to, there's international trading relations that needs to take place.
See,
there is investors, that we rely on.
Yeah.
So what happens is, what are the effects that will cause? It scars international reputations. It may raise costs for banks and asset managers. So now again, interest rates have gone up on the one side. So you know what it is. Our repayments have also gone up. This grey list puts further pressure on the consumer, on the end user, the South African citizen individually, households. It puts pressure on them. Businesses, it puts pressure on them. Further, the rand slumped as much as 1.2% against the dollar when the announcement was made. In 2019, South Africa failed to meet all 11 of FATF's effectiveness measures to combat money laundering and financing terrorism. And South Africa's central bank says that it could have wide-reaching consequences on capital and currency outflow, and it could increase transactional, administrative, and funding costs for banks, and it could increase government's foreign funding costs and weigh on trade flows, and it is but our president says it is unlikely to significantly affect South Africans.
And I shall jump in right here because he's lying to y'all. He's lying to y'all. So, our Bank of Namibia, right? Like the main bank. It says it will exercise increased caution when dealing with transactions of clients from South Africa, following its grey listing by the Financial Action Task Force, with the addition of the Republic of South Africa to that FATF list of jurisdictions subject to heightened scrutiny. The framework suggests that the risk of dealing with clients and/or transactions associated with or emanating from jurisdictions on the list are increased. As a result, relevant financial and non-financial institutions worldwide, including those in Namibia, must exercise caution when dealing with transactions or clients with ties or such jurisdictions. This does not imply quitting or de-risking, but rather taking the necessary precautions to reduce this risk to acceptable levels, the Apex Bank said on Tuesday. So my argument is this. You say we must not worry, yet we must worry. You are saying we must not care,
crisis.
but we must care.
Yeah.
Because imagine you as a business doing business in Namibia. Now the bank, FNB is like, hey, klomp geld, die wat kry my nie geld. What's going on?
Yeah.
Then that business in Namibia that's associated with you immediately has to do background checks. And in Namibia, it's like, it's not as, how do I say, rough like it is here, but it's done a little bit more thoroughly. We still respect our police and so forth, whereas here there's no respect. Like there's no respect for the government. There by Namibia it still is. There is, because Namibia does try to do things right.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they do it all the time. There's a lot of a hell of a lot of corruption going on there.
Yes.
But it's done in a way where Zeke says, "Wat net 'n bietjie sit in jou sak en dan." That's what they do.
But get the job done at least.
Yeah, that's what they do. Whereas here, it's like it's very odd to me how you guys just don't respect the police. Like
It's just like that. Yeah.
warrant of arrest,
so
but
my
you don't
question
care.
to you is how does this, because now unemployment rate, obviously, you know what, it has a knock-on effect, and it lands up here by us, you know, the normal day-to-day citizen. So what happens is now a lot of companies are retrenching. We've seen it since during the COVID period. They have to let people go. So a large portion of their staff is just like, look, we can't afford you anymore. The unemployment rate increases. Now, how does this further contribute to the trauma that we experience on the day-to-day basis?
If there's no bread in your house, if your food security is threatened, if your living conditions are threatened, then you're in a place of distress. And it adds to what our people are faced with right now. Because now you need to think, how am I going to feed my kids? Anxiety steps in. You're worried about the next day. How am I going to pay my bill? Will my house go? Because I cannot afford it anymore. And if you look at what we're saying about the president telling us that we shouldn't be worried, when all of the motor companies that are in South Africa are foreigners.
Yes.
It's foreign investment that's in the country, and people are threatening to de-invest in South Africa and take away. What's going to happen to the thousands of people in the motor industry, for one as an example?
Yeah.
And somebody said about greylisting and all of these things, and a simple answer to that: would you trust somebody that is willfully and blatantly using the funds for themselves?
Yes.
I entrust you to look after my investment while I'm in the country. Do you think I will invest in you anymore? No. So can you imagine the people at your food security is threatened? And I think part of security that would give is that if your food security and your livelihood is threatened, you are going into a place where you're worried about it. What am I going to eat? Who's going to provide? Because nobody is going to walk up to you and give you 100 rand just like that.
Yes.
And so it adds to what we are faced with daily, especially those people like in the banking institutions. They're retrenching. They're supposed to be a money generator, but this generation of money is almost going into a slump and taking a backseat. So it adds to where we are. And I think the big thing about it is that we cannot ignore it. You can't say don't be worried. You can't say don't take it with a pinch of salt. You can't take it with a pinch of salt. We need to be on high alerts, and as leadership of this country, they should look out for their citizens. But they are not doing anything progressive and concrete. Everything is pie in the sky. Don't worry. A statement like that. If you take other countries, for example, coming back to Japan, where they had to make a concerted effort and a serious effort. We need to rebuild within a few months.
Yes.
It did not take them a year before they were back to normal.
Sure.
And so it puts pressure on the people. When I don't know where am I going to get to feed my children,
Yes.
if I'm going to feed myself, I'm going to get to work, it puts pressure on us in terms of our emotional state and our mental health, because you're worried. And we can't blame anybody for getting to a place of anxiety.
Yes.
We can't blame people, because that is what, and the outlook is bleak. The outlook is bleak, especially when you're about to be affected by a retrenchment.
That's true.
Because it touches that, yes.
You spoke about the stages of grief, and apparently it's the same for the 5 stages of trauma. It's denial, stage 1. It's anger, stage 2. It's bargaining, stage 3. It's depression, stage 4. And then it's acceptance, stage 5. Look, we're in different places.
Yeah.
Each person, each to their own right. But I think, and you mentioned it before the show, you said a lot of us are still in that place of denial. And it's so true. We are still in that place of denial. 20 plus years later, we are still in the place of denial. Yeah. We are still denying the fact that there is a problem.
Yes.
That we are not progressing. And one industry in South Africa, state-owned industry in South Africa, that is, again, well, there's plenty. There's Eskom, there's Transnet, there is
Via now latest.
Via, there is SAA, there is but one that, and I mean all these companies, all these entities have had to retrench.
Yes.
Large scale retrenchments. It's obviously just the people at the top. SABC as well, another one. Healthcare. So there's so much retrenchments happening, but this is what trauma does, and it blindsides us to this. The post office at the moment is non-existent. You cannot rely on the post office at all. It's in complete shambles, right? You go to this is the attitude that you have of service providers, the employees of these places. You go to the place and there's an attitude, and this is throughout South Africa.
Yes.
It's that entitlement thing that.
So what?
Now what must I? What do you want here?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I'm doing you a favor.
Actually, you are bothering my life. Why did you come
Exactly.
here?
I'm doing you a favor. We come there, we take lunch when we want to take lunch, we sit and we talk for however long we want to talk, and whatever the case may be. But you mentioned something in your last line there. You said that unemployment is looming at your doorstep.
Yes.
You have this attitude of, I don't need to move me if you can.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't owe you anything.
Yeah.
Now you come there as a customer, you try to get service that you are entitled to because you are paying for it.
Yeah.
And this person is like, move me if you want. And then you get retrenched, you unemployed, and you want to go and strike. But you are the reason for your own demise.
Correct.
And that is where South Africans, because we are in such a state of denial, that we think that the money is never going to run out, that we think that we are forever going to be secured in whatever we in our positions because of triple BEE. And this is my argument that I had the last time when I was speaking about putting black and brown South Africans against each other. And when I was talking about triple BEE, and I was saying that triple BEE is just an extension of apartheid, because you are still excluding people, which does not help, because you need everybody to club together to build forward. Then it was a matter of, you don't know, you don't understand, you are just bitter. I'm like, bitter for what? Have you been, my question to you is, have you been benefiting from triple BEE? Because according to what I understand, even that is corrupt.
Yeah.
You must pay your way through.
It's a form of privilege.
So we've got all these things happening, but we just continue the cycle of trauma. Now my question is, to end off the show, what can we do to stop the cycle, to prevent ourselves from, at least for God's sake, to not transfer this trauma to this next generation. At least that.
So I think part of where we are is to complete the circle. And everybody on the circle of grief and the circle of trauma is to identify where you are and to start dealing with that.
Yes.
And to start getting to a place where you accept it, but not just accept it for the fact that I'm going to wallow in where I am and that acceptance. But acceptance, the reason why acceptance is part of the steps is so that you can accept what has happened and you better and move on from there. Remember, I believe this, that for as long as you're in a counseling office, it's safe and secure.
Yes.
And I've got the saying, the minute you put your foot over the doorstep and you leave my office and you put both feet outside, it's as though you're on your own again. So we empower you and we give you tools to work with that. But it starts the minute you step outside of that office.
Yes.
That is where it comes. You need to get to grips with where you are. You need to accept, not the counselor. You need to accept. You need to put the things in place for the strategy to make your life better and build up and almost secure that this never ever happens to you again. And for families, I was saying to you the other day, so I was going outside and I took the bin out and it was, I think, just after 8:20 when the lights had gone down. And this eerie quiet was around.
Sure.
You know what? I was taken right back to lockdown when it was so quiet. No cars riding around, nothing. I was taken right back. And that in itself can be traumatic because how many people didn't get divorced during COVID? How many people lost family members? I mean, we're supposed to be united together as a family, but everybody's doing whatever they need to do. Everybody isolated, and that isolation to some people were not good for the extended amount of periods. We're social beings and we need to socialize. And I think what we need to do is that I firmly believe that mental health starts with after you leave the counselor's office or the professional that you're seeking, it starts there where you make conscious decisions never to get back, or rather maybe not want to predict how things will happen to you, but formulate and put plans and strategies together in order for this never to happen or occur. And should it occur again, you are equipped with the experience that you've gone through to know that this has happened and this is the way that you deal with it. There are options, there are certain things that you can do, but it starts, I think, with the individual. Recognizing where you are, getting to the place, identify firstly, identify it, work through it, get the necessary help that you need to get from a professional person that you need to, and then from there, everything depends upon you, where you take it from there. And for families, I want to say that if there's time of load shedding, put away the phones and just engage one another. Bring that positive vibe in your house again. Speak about it. If you need to buy candles, buy the candles. Someone put the cake there and make somebody's birthday. But do something that will stimulate that growth, because ultimately we don't want to get into a place where there's depression in the household. And now everybody's working on each other's nerves because there's no lights. You're anxious about it. Even the way the people drive on the roads today, I mean, a four-way stop is becoming like what it looks like in Nigeria. Everybody's in there. And people are impatient. Complete chaos. And I think that people should just try to exercise more patience, more tolerance. I don't know what else. You know, we are all in this together. So it's like almost the blind leading the blind, because I'm affected by it. You get impatient on the road. You know, people want to get into a four-way, and it's just this amount of things that's happening. So it's like the blind leading the blind. But I think a concerted effort must be made within the household and individuals, that this is where we are. Identify the stage where you are, and then seek help, find help, and come we see how we make South Africa better.
It's like the corruption in Namibia. It's very big. It's quite sad because they refuse. They have the funds, but they refuse to revamp the state hospitals, which looks really bad. There's rats running around. You get like 16 people laying in a room. It's bad. And then they build a whole new political party building right across the state hospital that's in dire need, with the airpad for the helicopters and stuff. So the corruption in Namibia is quite bad. However, putting that against what's happening in South Africa, it's a little bit better.
It's like putting a candle to the sun.
Yes, basically. So like we complain because that's what's affecting us. I am subjective to that. Whereas here, it gives me objectivity because when I compare the two, it's like, I prefer home.
Okay.
Yes.
Even with that.
Yes.
Because here, guys, even driving on the road, it's really bad. When Annika comes visit, she drives like she's a donkey cart. I'm like, just drive. Like, drive normally. Drive. In
Take
fact, you
it
can drive
easy.
40 and you're still fine. You're fast. Just breathe. It's
Yes.
like the culture shock to me. Politically speaking, I'm quite frightened when I'm in Johannesburg. I'm not going to lie. But it's vital to understand in order to understand what's happening in my country.
Yes.
It gives me perspective on what's happening
what's
on
happening,
my
yeah.
country. So this is a good exposure. However, some people must just change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
People must change.
So we have come to the end of our show, and I just want to wrap up in summary what Neil was saying with regards to how to deal with the trauma. And one of the things that he mentioned that is very important, and I think that because we were discussing it and I was like, it's so true. I realized it and I didn't know how to articulate it, but you put it so beautifully into words that there's like a complete deafening silence when load shedding happens. It's like we go into this space where we just like, withdraw. And COVID has done that to us. It has caused isolation, it has caused depression and all those things. But one of the things that you said is make a concerted effort to change that. So for instance, one of the things that you mentioned as an example, as a family, when there's load shedding, put the phones down. Sit and talk to each other. Evangelique from the Gabfest show, we had a conversation this morning and she was saying that I realize now that I don't talk much anymore. And it affects my ability to articulate myself in a public setting when I come into contact with people. I know what I want to say, but I don't know how to say it. Because what I'm realizing is that I'm not talking to anybody. Even at the office, you sit in front of your computer, you've got your earphones in, and you don't talk to people. You are focused on work. That is what has happened to us. We are zoned in to just getting the task done, finishing, moving on to the next. We're not taking time for self-reflection. We're not taking time for engagement with other people. And it's true even with myself. I noticed that. I was like, why am I suckling with English? I know, Afrikaans is my mother's tongue. My mother's tongue, because English is my tongue. It's my second language. Afrikaans is my second language. But I suckle sometimes with the English. Like, typical example.
Bundles are expiring.
Exactly. And it's like, it's not that I don't know how to speak English, guys. It's just that I haven't been speaking much to people, because we're on our phones, we are reading grammatically incorrect sentences on social media.
But it's how we speak.
But what I realize is, and I've done this, I've made a concerted effort to what I do is, I take time, especially during load shedding, and it's a struggle because we're so conditioned to take the phones immediately, even if it's just to play a game, to save offline videos and movies on Netflix. But what I've done is, because I've got so many books, and I'm gonna brag about it. I've almost got I'm building my library. I've got so many books that I have not read, and I bought a lot of books during the December period that I wanted to get into reading, but I haven't gotten to do it. So what I do now is that I make an effort every single time there's load shedding, at least for one of those load shedding periods, to sit at least for an hour and read. And now, I don't know if you guys been noticing, but I'm flowing better. I don't know. But
It's the flow for me, it's the bars.
It's the bars. I'm coming with the bars,
And just coming back to that, they've showed in one research how the effect of turning a page has got a sense of accomplishment.
Yes.
You feel good when you turn the page. It's like a physical thing. You
Look, we
touch
book it for a year.
It's
equal.
Put the thing in
Professor Jordan B. Peterson, in his books 12 Rules for Life, his very first thing is get up and, he says get up and stand up straight or something like that. I can't remember rule number one. That's rule number one. But he says a simple thing like making your bed up in the morning. It's endorphins are being released because you've accomplished something. So simple things like that. I think that is, it's menial. It seems like menial things, but it's things that we need to put into practice. One other thing that I'd like to add to that, and I cannot not add to this part, and it is your spiritual well-being. Yes. Check your spiritual well-being. We are filled with gunk on a daily basis. Hollywood is and Hollywood and Nollywood and Bollywood and all the woods, the hoods. We are literally in the hood because
Hood.
it's like hood rat vibes because we are filled with junk. So we need to take time out to get filled up with the word of God. What is God telling us? What are we hearing from God? Spend time in prayer. Make sure, because that affects everything else in your life.
If I can just latch on to that, the prayer is the one thing that sustains us.
Yes.
Prayer is the one thing that keeps us grounded.
Yes.
Prayer is the one thing that keeps us motivated. Prayer is the one thing that centers us back to our Creator. And that is the prayer of our hearts, really.
Yes.
Is that people would get around as much as there's family time and you talk to one another, as you alluded to, Lou, is that can we get back to a place of prayer? Let's get back to a place of seeking God first and His kingdom.
Yes.
And understanding what He's saying. Because I believe one of the things that I left out that I wanted to say was that the change in South Africa does not lie in the hands of a man.
Nope.
But in the hands of our God.
Yeah.
Yes.
Amen. Amen. Mickey, can you just get in those last comments for me, please? And then we have to call it a day.
I have to call it quits. Where did I end off? Okay. Annalise Jacob says, so truly. Lucas says, adjustment trauma in our countries is similar to treating the symptoms and not the root cause or disease. Nothing will really get better and might even get worse until the root is addressed. Then Albie says there's already 50% unemployment. The country is on the brink of collapse and President says there's nothing to worry about. Nicole van Heeren says we can talk about the situation over and over again, but what can we do to change the situation and find ourselves in where do we start? Do you guys think that the 350 is helping or hurting our country? That's from Sheldon Banks.
Definitely
Albie
hurting.
says BBEE only helps the politically connected few. Keenan Cox has emojis, and then Sheldon Banks says make your bed.
Yes. So I'm going to end off with this and then we're going to call it. But thank you so much for everybody who tuned in. Thank you for being part of the discussion. This is my advice to you on how to deal with trauma. And then also, if you haven't done so already, because we're going to end it on this very last sentence that I am going to be reading. So we're going to end the show. But if you haven't done so already, you see the English. Already. Please like, subscribe, and hit that notification
Notification bell.
You know what to do. You know what I mean, man. I was bragging about my reading and my English. And
So
Cake, no.
So it shows that you weren't reading from the internet.
I wasn't. Yes. And I'm going to give you advice from Psalm 91. It is found in the Holy Bible. It says, blessed is the one who does not walk in the steps of the wicked, or sit in the way of sinners, or sit in the company. No. It says, or stand in the way that sinners take, or sit in the company of mockers, but whose delight is in the law of the Lord, and who meditates on his law day and night. That person is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Whatever they do prospers.
Yes.
Not so the wicked, for they are like chaff that the wind blows away. Therefore, the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the assembly of the righteous. For the Lord watches over the ways of the righteous, but the ways of the wicked leads to destruction. Love you guys. Until next time. Bye.
Bye-bye. Keep well.